He survived Vireos' wrath, but the planet isn't done with him yet. The forest was quiet, but it was not a true quiet. It was the kind of silence that holds its breath. The tall trees of Vireos glowed in soft blue and green. Their light rose and fell like a tide. Leaves trembled, then went still. Small animals stayed hidden in root hollows. Even the wind seemed to listen. Jonah stood at the edge of the Heartstone and tried to believe the fight was over. His hands were still scraped from the last battle. His shirt was torn at the shoulder. Dry streaks of sap marked his palms where he had pressed them to the ground and begged the planet to help. It had helped. The hunters had fled. He and Lyra were alive. But Jonah's chest carried a strange beat now. It was not only his own heart. Sometimes a low pulse rolled through him, like a drum far away. It matched the glow of the trees. It matched the soft breath of the earth. The planet had taken him in, a little. It comforted him and worried him at the same time. Lyra stood a few steps away, quiet and alert. Her emerald skin reflected the forest light. Her hair, those living vines, rested on her shoulders, but he knew they could rise like whips in a blink. She watched the shadows between the trunks. She listened the way hunters listen, but her eyes, when they flicked to Jonah, softened for a moment. Then they went hard again. "It is too still," she said. "I know," Jonah answered. "Forests aren't quiet after a storm. Not like this." They walked the wreck line together. The ground still showed scars from burning metal and falling frames. Vines had started to grow over the damage. The planet was healing itself fast, faster than seemed possible. Jonah reached down and touched a fresh green shoot. The shoot warmed his fingertip. He felt a small reply in his chest, like a hello. That was when the earth beside his boot shivered. Jonah stepped back. Dirt cracked. A fist-sized shape pushed up through the soil and clicked open. It was the head of a hunter drone, half buried, its eye dark and cracked. He lifted a stick to nudge it away. The eye lit. Just a pin of red at first. Then a full glow. Lyra moved before the light could grow. Her blade flashed. The drone head split with a sharp snap. It should have gone dead. Instead, the broken eye spit a thin beam straight into the sky, like a red thread thrown upward. A dead thing had found one last breath. "It is sending," Lyra said. "Into the dark." Jonah's stomach turned cold. Then something in the dark is listening. The beam faded. The drone eye went dull for good. But the forest began to flicker. Leaves shifted from blue to purple. The air felt heavy, like the moment before thunder. A low hum grew under their feet. Jonah pressed his palm to the ground. The hum rolled through his bones and up his spine. "Talk to me," he whispered to the soil. He did not know if the planet understood words, but it seemed to understand his need. A shape formed in his mind. A line above the world. A single point piercing the sky and drinking. He looked up. At first he saw only clouds. Then he saw a black hairline. It cut the high sky from horizon to horizon. It looked thin, almost nothing, but it made his teeth hurt to stare at it. The line widened, and Jonah saw it was not a ship. It was a spear. A long, narrow engine stuck in the upper air, wrong in every way, drinking light. The glow of the trees faltered. Frogs burst from a pond and fled into roots. Birds took to the air in wild spirals, then crashed back down as if the air itself pushed them. Far off, a river brightened until it looked like a silver wire. Jonah smelled metal and storms. "The Syndicate," he said. He did not know how he knew, but he knew it. The hunters' makers, the ones who sent them, the minds that had planned the harvest long ago. They had heard the drone's last scream. They had come fast. Lyra's eyes burned amber. "We cut it down." "Not yet," Jonah said. "If we strike blind, it will drink faster." He ran to the salvaged console he had propped against a root wall. It was a warped slab from his ship, wired to a nest of vine threads and quartz leaves. He had built it to read the heart's song. Now he tuned the dials with quick, careful hands. The screen jumped with waves. The spear hummed in a horror-pure tone. "Altitude. High thermosphere," he said, thinking aloud. "Anchored to a choke field. It's masking itself behind the planet's magnet glow. Smart. Ugly." The spear altered. It unfolded like a cold flower. Blade slid out and locked. The hum grew sharper. The ground dimmed under their feet. Lyra's jaw tightened as her glow thinned, like a lantern running out of oil. "Jonah," she said, and there was fear in it. Not for herself. For the forest. He set his hands on the console and took a slow breath. The strange second heartbeat kicked against his ribs. He let it guide his fingers. He felt the wave the spear made. He felt the wave the heart made. He tried to make the heart's wave stand in the way. For a moment, the sky stuttered. The spear's tone skipped. The light under his boots returned. And then the hum surged back, louder, crueler, as if the spear had learned his trick in one breath. Jonah's nose bled. He wiped it with the back of his hand and smiled, small and stubborn. They adapt, he said. Good. So do we. Lyra looked at him. The fear in her eyes shifted to fire. Then speak your plan, human. Jonah lifted the chalk he kept in his pocket and drew on the battered hull of his ruined ship. Circles. Arrows. 3 steps. Blind the spear. Warn the stars. Keep the heart alive. He underlined the first step once, hard. First, he said, we make it deaf. Dawn broke like spilled gold over the jungle. The light filtered through mist and glowing leaves, turning the air into shifting ribbons of color. Vireos looked calm again, but Jonah knew better. The calm was a mask. Beneath the moss and roots, the planet trembled. Lyra was already awake, kneeling near the heart of a fallen tree, her hands pressed against its bark. She whispered something in her own tongue, low, melodic, full of sorrow. The tree responded with a dim pulse of light, then went still. Its energy had been drained, its life absorbed by the spear that still hung in the sky like a wound. Jonah stood a few steps behind her, studying the horizon. The black spear was faint but visible even in daylight, a thin shadow cutting through clouds, humming with power. He had seen weapons like that before, built by human hands, designed to destroy or dominate. But this was different. It didn't just take energy, it drank life. The spear feeds, Lyra said without looking back. It is a mouth that never closes. Jonah nodded. Then we make it choke. He pulled a piece of broken plating from his ship and spread it flat on a rock. Using charcoal and a piece of sharp crystal, he began sketching lines, circuits, and signals, ideas he wasn't sure could even work here. Lyra stepped closer, her eyes scanning the strange symbols. You draw to fight? She asked. Jonah smiled faintly. I think with my hands. This is how humans plan. We don't have roots that talk to the world like yours. We build patterns until they make sense. He paused, glancing up at the spear again. That thing isn't just pulling power, it's listening, mapping energy signatures. We can use that. How? By confusing it. Jonah tapped the metal plate. We make noise. Real noise. A signal storm. If it can't tell what's real and what's reflection, it can't drain anything. Lyra frowned. Noise can harm the forest. It can save it too, Jonah replied. We tune it to the planet's rhythm, not against it. The forest seemed to stir at his words. Leaves rustled though there was no wind. A soft pulse ran through the soil, brushing Jonah's boots like a heartbeat of approval or warning. It was hard to tell which. They began to work. Jonah scavenged every working fragment from the wreck of the Horizon Runner. Energy coils, fractured conduits, even a cracked navigation lens. Lyra called to the forest, and vines slithered from the earth to form thick, flexible cords. Bioluminescent leaves hardened into panels that reflected light like glass. It was a strange sight, metal and nature braided together under human hands and alien will. By nightfall, the first of the towers stood complete, a thin frame of steel wrapped in living roots, its tip glowing faintly blue. Jonah called it a resonance pillar. There would need to be 7. He wiped sweat from his face, breathing hard. If this works, it'll scramble the spear's field. Maybe give us a few hours of quiet. And if it fails? Lyra asked. Jonah looked up at the stars beyond the spear's black line. Then we find another way. Humans don't stop until something works. Lyra studied him, her expression unreadable. You speak as though you lead worlds. He chuckled softly. No, I just fix things until they stop breaking. When the last pillar was ready, Jonah connected the final vine line to the heartstone. The ground beneath them glowed, veins of light spreading outward. He turned a small dial on the console. The pillars began to hum, low and deep, like the sound of a tide under the earth. At first, it worked. The spear's hum wavered, its shadow dimming. Energy readings dropped. The sky flickered. Jonah grinned. It's working. But then the tone changed. The spear responded, not by fighting back, but by listening. It adjusted. The hum twisted, shifted, and grew louder. The resonance pillars began to tremble, their vines sparking with blue fire. One shattered, then another. The forest howled as roots recoiled from the feedback. The spear had learned their rhythm. Jonah dove for the controls, slamming the power feed off. The pillars went silent. Smoke drifted between them, faint and glowing. The silence after was deafening. Lyra was breathing hard, her skin dimmed to pale green. "The forest screams when you push it too hard," she said. Jonah looked down at the burned vines. "Yeah," he muttered, his voice low but fierce. "But it also learns." Lyra tilted her head. "Learns." Jonah's grin returned, tired but defiant. "That's the secret of humans. We fail first, then we figure it out." He turned to the sky, watching the spear pulse brighter, as if mocking him. "You're fast," he said under his breath. "But we're faster." Lyra stepped beside him, her amber eyes glowing once more. "Then speak your next move, Jonah Pierce. The forest is ready to listen." Jonah looked at her, at the forest around them, at the sky split by that black wound. The challenge in his smile was unmistakable. "Then let's make this planet roar." The next day dawned thick with fog, silver and heavy, clinging to every branch like breath that refused to leave. The black spear still hung in the sky, humming faintly, its reflection rippling across every surface of water like a scar drawn over the world. Jonah hadn't slept. Neither had Lyra. The first attempt had failed. But failure was not defeat. Humans learned fastest when everything went wrong. Jonah crouched near the Heartstone, sketching again on the metal hull of his ship, lines crossing lines. Wild, messy, alive. Beside him, the vines he had used for the first array now lay coiled like sleeping snakes. Lyra watched quietly, her arms folded, eyes glowing dimly. "You plan again," she said softly. "Even after the forest punished your first noise." Jonah smiled faintly. It wasn't punishment. It was feedback. Lyra raised a brow. "Feedback?" He pointed upward. "That thing adapted to our frequency. So we change ours faster than it can track. We give it reflections, shadows, illusions." He drew a rough circle on the hull. "A mirror, but not a real one. A resonance mirror. It'll take the heart's pulse and bounce it back to the spear, out of phase. That's how you stop a thief. You make the stolen energy bite back." Lyra knelt beside him, tracing a line on the drawing. "You wish to turn the forest's song into a weapon." Jonah hesitated. "A defense. Weapons take life. This gives it back." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. "Then we build your mirror." The work began before the fog lifted. Jonah tore open more panels from his wreck, spreading them in a circle around the Heartstone. The forest lent its help, roots rising, leaves hardening into translucent plates. Lyra moved among them like a conductor guiding an unseen orchestra. Wherever she walked, the vines obeyed, weaving and tightening. Jonah directed her movements through hand gestures and quiet words. "Left, angle it toward the ridge. No, higher. That's it." The air shimmered as the structure took form, a ring of floating panels, each laced with veins of living light. They pulsed in rhythm with the planet's heartbeat, every thrum mirrored and echoed, bouncing from one plate to the next. By noon, Jonah stood in the center of the circle, his palms resting on two quartz slabs. He could feel the energy moving, gentle at first, like warm wind through grass. Then it built, deep and steady, a vibration that lived beneath the skin. Lyra watched, tension sharpening her stance. "If the mirror misfires, it could turn the heart against itself," she warned. Jonah nodded. "I know. But if we do nothing, the spear keeps drinking." He took a breath, steadied his hands, and whispered, "Let's try this." The first pulse hit like thunder. The resonance mirror shone bright white for a heartbeat. Then the light fractured, rippling out through the forest like sound waves through water. The spear's hum faltered. "It's working," Jonah shouted, grinning. The ground underfoot thrummed, answering the rhythm of his pulse. Then, suddenly, a new sound rose, a grinding tone that made his teeth ache. The spear sang back. The feedback returned twice as strong, slamming into the mirror like a physical blow. Panels cracked. Vines snapped loose. Jonah was thrown backward into the dirt. Lyra caught him before he hit a stone, her vines curling protectively around them both. Smoke rose from the shattered mirror. Sparks danced between the shards. For a few seconds, silence ruled again. Then the forest shuddered. A low, Ancient sound echoed through the trees, something deeper than any voice Jonah had heard before. It wasn't speech. It was intent. The planet was listening. Jonah staggered to his feet, clutching his ribs. Lyra, did you hear that? Her glowing eyes widened. No, I felt it. The forest's light changed, slowly at first, then in great waves of shifting color, blue to violet to gold. The ground beneath them moved, alive and aware. In Jonah's mind, a single image appeared, the heart of the world, massive, crystalline, ancient, buried far below. It pulsed once, then again, faster, sinking to his own heartbeat. He understood. The planet wasn't angry. It was answering. Jonah turned to Lyra, breathless. The mirror failed, but it woke something up. The heart knows what we're doing. Lyra looked uneasy. And what does it want? Jonah smiled, a strange light in his eyes. To fight back. The forest responded in ways he couldn't explain. Trees shifted their roots, aligning themselves with invisible patterns. The mirror fragments rose from the ground and floated, suspended in a web of vines. The energy between them stabilized, no longer chaotic, but harmonic, like chords finding balance. Jonah reached out, fingers trembling. It's helping me finish it. Lyra watched, awe and fear mingling in her voice. You commanded. No, Jonah whispered. We're working together. He closed his eyes, letting the pulse guide him. His hands moved without thought, turning dials, twisting wires, tracing runes into the dirt. Every movement matched the rhythm of the forest. For the first time, human logic and alien instinct were one. The light swelled again, so bright it washed away the colors of the world. The air filled with a low, steady hum. Then, for a brief, impossible moment, the spear stopped humming. Jonah opened his eyes. The black line in the sky shimmered, fractured like glass, and its dark energy recoiled upward as though slapped. The mirror held. Lyra exhaled, her voice almost a whisper. You have made the forest roar, human. Jonah looked up at the trembling spear and grinned through blood and sweat. Good, he said. Now let's make it scream. The night came with a strange kind of silence, too deep, too tense, like the air itself was waiting for something to break. Jonah sat beside the half-repaired hull of the Horizon Runner, his fingers blackened with grease and soil. He hadn't stopped moving since the resonance mirror fired. The mirror had worked, for a moment, but that moment had changed everything. The spear's song had gone silent, yet now, the silence itself felt dangerous. Lyra stood at the edge of the clearing, her amber eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. The forest behind her pulsed with dim light, the trees shimmering like breathing creatures. The heart is restless, she said quietly. It senses more than we can see. Jonah glanced up from the open panel in his hand. You mean the spear? No, she said, her voice low and steady. Something else. It's coming. Before Jonah could ask, the ground trembled. A slow, rolling vibration spread through the soil, strong enough to rattle the hull beside him. The trees around the clearing bent as though pushed by invisible hands. Then came a sound, a high, mechanical shriek, followed by the deep growl of engines descending through cloud. Jonah's eyes widened. That's not thunder. From the darkness above, something tore through the sky, burning, screaming, alive. It was a ship, but not like any human design he knew. Sleek, black, covered in angular plates that shimmered with dark red energy. It plunged toward the forest and stopped in midair, hovering just above the treetops. Its shape reflected the light like oil on water. Lyra's voice sharpened. Hunters. No, Jonah said, shaking his head. Bigger. The ship's underside opened. Metallic pods dropped from its belly, unfolding midair into long, spider-like frames that hit the ground with a heavy thud. Each frame had 6 jointed limbs tipped with claws that pierced the soil. They moved with terrifying precision. Red sensors blinked across their bodies. Harvest frames, Lyra whispered. The spear was only their anchor. This is the blade. Jonah's pulse quickened. He could feel the forest's fear, its heartbeat pounding through the ground, trembling up his legs. The heart was calling him again. They're after it, he said. The heart of the planet. They want to take it. Lyra drew her blade, a curved weapon grown from the roots of an ancient tree. It glowed faintly green in her hand. Then they will die trying. The first of the frames lunged forward, claws slicing through the soil. Roots snapped like bones. Jonah grabbed the nearest tool he could, a length of power conduit, and slammed it into a control socket on the runner's hull. Electricity roared through the vines running along the ground, sparking brilliant white. The nearest frame staggered, its limbs jerking wildly before collapsing in a shower of sparks. Lyra was already moving. She leapt into the air, twisting as her blade slashed through another frame's sensor eye. The creature shrieked, a mechanical, animal sound, and toppled backward, crushing two smaller drones beneath its weight. "Nice hit," Jonah shouted, ducking as a stray laser beam burned through a tree trunk beside him. Lyra landed beside him, her breath steady despite the chaos. "There are too many," she said. "We must destroy the control source." "The Corvette," Jonah said. "Up there. It's directing them." He scanned the clearing, mind racing. The mirror's fragments still floated overhead, faintly pulsing from their earlier activation. An idea sparked. "If I can push a feedback surge through the heart again, it might fry their link." Lyra frowned. "You could burn yourself doing that." Jonah smirked. "Wouldn't be the first time." He sprinted toward the heartstone, dodging the crackling beams that tore through the clearing. The vines under his feet shifted to shield him, forming quick paths of glowing roots that carried him forward. The planet itself seemed to help him move. Lyra followed, cutting down any drone that came close. When he reached the heartstone, Jonah dropped to his knees, pressing both palms to the warm surface. The energy beneath it pulsed, steady, rhythmic, alive. "All right," he whispered. "You helped me before. Help me again." The response came like a surge of lightning through his veins. His chest burned with light. His eyes filled with gold. The connection between him and Vireos deepened until there was no line between them. Only one heartbeat, one will. He opened his mouth and screamed, not in pain, but in release. The mirror shards hanging above the clearing blazed to life. The broken pieces spun faster, fusing into a ring of living fire. The resonance grew until the air itself trembled. Then Jonah pushed. A shockwave of sound exploded outward. It wasn't loud, it was felt. The drones froze, their limbs twitching as their internal systems overloaded. The Corvette above them shuddered, its engines whining. "Jonah!" Lyra's voice cut through the roar. "Stop! You'll tear the forest apart." But Jonah couldn't stop. The energy inside him was no longer something he controlled. It was something that used him. He saw flashes of light, visions of stars, roots stretching through space. For a moment, he was everywhere. He was part of everything. Then the mirror ring cracked, shattering the trance. The shockwave ceased. Jonah collapsed forward, gasping, his skin flickering faintly with bioluminescent veins. The forest fell silent again. Smoke hung heavy in the air. Every drone was down, silent or burning. Lyra rushed to him, kneeling beside his motionless form. "Jonah, breathe," she shouted, shaking him. His chest rose weakly. His eyes opened, no longer only human. The gold glow lingered for a moment before fading. "I told you," he rasped, managing a crooked smile. "It worked." Lyra looked around, the wrecked drones, the still air, the faint pulse of the forest already healing itself. "You have bound yourself to Vireos completely," she whispered. "It listens through you now." Jonah sat up slowly, staring at the fallen machines. "Then maybe," he said, voice hoarse but certain, "it's time I start listening back." Above them, the Corvette pulled away, scarred but alive. Its lights dimmed as it climbed toward the black spear, retreating to orbit. For now, they had won. But deep inside the soil, the heart of Vireos pulsed harder, faster, as if warning them. Something greater was awakening, something older than the Syndicate, older than even the forest itself. The fire in the grove was only the beginning. The next morning, the forest smelled of rain and metal. Smoke still hung low, caught between the giant glowing trunks, but life had already started to crawl back. New vines crept over the wrecked harvest frames, pulling them down into the soil like the planet itself wanted to forget what had happened. Jonah sat beside the heartstone, his body wrapped in makeshift bandages, his breathing uneven. His veins still shimmered faintly beneath the skin, thin lines of light pulsing in rhythm with the earth. Every beat reminded him that he was no longer just human. Lyra moved silently nearby, her movements slower than usual. The battle had drained her too. She carried a small vial filled with shimmering sap, the forest's healing fluid, and poured a drop on his arm. It stung, then cooled, leaving behind a faint golden mark that refused to fade. "You heal fast," she said, studying the mark. Jonah gave a weak laugh. "Or the planet's doing it for me." Her gaze lingered on his face. "You are changing, Jonah Pierce. The forest hums through your blood. You are tethered." He didn't deny it. Every sound around him carried meaning now, the hum of insects, the rustle of leaves, even the low pulse of roots underground. He could hear the planet breathe. And sometimes, beneath all that, he thought he heard whispers. When night fell, those whispers grew louder. Jonah stood outside the clearing, staring up at the black spear that still lingered in the upper sky. It had dimmed after the battle, but it was not gone. Lightning crawled faintly along its edges, flashing like veins in a dead god's arm. The whisper came again, clearer now. A voice inside his mind. Not human, not alien, but both. "They are coming." He froze, glancing at Lyra. "Did you hear that?" She looked up from the fire. "Hear what?" "The forest. It's speaking again." Lyra rose, her expression turning serious. "The heart does not speak twice unless it fears something." Jonah nodded slowly. "Then it's afraid." They spent the next day scanning the wreckage, salvaging anything useful. Jonah worked tirelessly, connecting broken circuits and rewiring coils. His goal wasn't escape, not yet. He needed communication. The outside galaxy had to know what was happening here. He sat cross-legged beside the hull, surrounded by glowing panels, tapping commands into his cracked console. "If I can tune the runner's array through the heart's field," he muttered, "I might be able to send a signal beyond the spear's block." Lyra crouched beside him, watching his fingers move. "A signal? To call more outsiders?" "No," Jonah said, shaking his head. "To warn them. To let them know the Syndicate's back. That they're trying to drain living worlds." He looked at her, his eyes tired but steady. "I'm not letting this happen again. Not to Vireos, not anywhere." She hesitated, then nodded. "Then the forest will help you send your warning." By dusk, the device was ready. 7 crystal nodes sat in a circle, connected by living vine cables that pulsed with light. At their center, Jonah's console blinked, its tiny screen glowing blue. "All right," Jonah whispered. "Let's give the galaxy something it can't ignore." He pressed the key. The heart responded instantly. The light of the forest brightened, spreading outward in waves. Energy rippled up through the roots, into the soil, into the sky itself. A pillar of golden light shot upward from the clearing, piercing the clouds and scattering the dark haze. Jonah's voice echoed, carried by the pulse. "To anyone listening, this is Jonah Pierce. The Syndicate is alive. They're draining life from planets. They came for Vireos, but the world fought back." The air trembled as the signal grew stronger. His voice deepened, merging with the planet's resonance. "If you value your world, don't come to take. Come to protect. Come to learn. Humanity stands with the living, and we will not bow." When it was over, the light faded. The forest dimmed. Jonah fell back, exhausted. Lyra approached, kneeling beside him. "The forest carried your words far," she said softly. "It reached beyond the sky. Others will hear." He managed a tired smile. "Then maybe we won't be alone in this fight." But even as he said it, the ground quivered again. The spear flickered in the distance, faint red sparks crawling across its surface. From its core, a new shape began to form. A lattice of dark energy winding down toward the planet like a spider spinning its web. Jonah's console beeped, detecting a returning signal. He frowned and pulled the screen closer. The text scrolled in a foreign code, but the translation came fast. "Transmission received. Negotiation protocol. Return the heart. Or be preserved." Lyra leaned closer, reading the words. Her expression hardened. "Preserved means destroyed." Jonah exhaled slowly. "Yeah, I figured." He stood, wiping the dirt from his hands. "They think we'll surrender the heart. They think we're afraid." Lyra's vine stirred restlessly. "What will you do?" Jonah looked at the spear, his jaw tightening. "We make them a promise." He turned to the glowing forest, placing his hand against the nearest tree. "You said they're coming, right? Then we'll be ready. But not just to fight." Lyra frowned. "Then for what?" Jonah's eyes glinted with determination. "To turn their weapon against them." That night, under the eerie glow of the spear, Jonah began sketching again. Circles, spirals, unfamiliar patterns drawn into the dirt with the glowing end of a broken circuit wire. His mind raced faster than his hands could move. A plan was forming, wild, dangerous, and deeply human. The spear pulls energy down, he said to himself, almost in a trance. So what if we send it back up? Not a weapon, a seed, a piece of Vireos itself. Lyra's voice was soft behind him. You would give the stars a piece of our world? Jonah smiled faintly. No, I'd give them a warning that this world knows how to fight back. The forest around them pulsed once, like a heartbeat of approval. And far above, in the cold silence of space, the black spear began to tremble. The sun rose blood orange through a shroud of mist. Every leaf on Vireos glistened with dew, but beneath the beauty, tension brewed like thunder behind glass. The spear still loomed above, its black edges now pulsing with a steady, deliberate rhythm. It wasn't just watching anymore. It was charging. Jonah hadn't slept. He sat cross-legged beside the heartstone, a dozen open devices scattered around him. Wires, fragments, cracked lenses, even a vine that pulsed faintly in his palm like a living circuit. His hands moved with focused calm, though his eyes burned with exhaustion and determination. Lyra stood nearby, silent, watching him work. She looked different too. The emerald glow of her skin was dimmer, marked with streaks of silver where the forest's energy had overfilled her veins. The price of their connection was showing on both of them. You haven't eaten, she said finally. Not hungry. Jonah's voice was quiet, distracted. Almost done. He pressed 2 shards of crystal together. They sparked, then fused into a single glowing piece that hovered above his palm, humming softly. Lyra stepped closer, curiosity flickering in her golden eyes. What is that? Jonah smiled faintly. A heartbeat. She frowned. Explain. He looked up at her. The spear is draining life, so we reverse the flow. We send Vireos up the line. A seed. A living echo of the heart's rhythm. It'll overload their system from the inside out. They can't kill what's already growing inside them. Lyra studied him for a long moment. You mean to infect them with life? Exactly. Jonah nodded. We'll give the Syndicate a taste of the thing they try to harvest. They worked together for hours. Jonah weaving human circuitry, Lyra commanding the forest's growth to shape it around his design. The heart itself helped, its deep pulse answering Jonah's thoughts like an unseen partner. By noon, the device was ready, a crystalline sphere encased in roots, glowing from within like a captured sun. It pulsed in harmony with the planet's rhythm. Every beat carried warmth, memory, life. Jonah called it the seed. Lyra stared at it in awe. It feels alive. It is, Jonah said softly. And it's ready. He placed his hand on the heartstone. Now we just need a launch. The heart answered. The ground trembled, a slow, steady vibration rising through the soil. The vines around them pulled back, revealing the glowing veins beneath the earth. Light surged upward, gathering beneath the seed. But before Jonah could activate the sequence, the air changed, thickened, electric. A high, metallic shriek tore through the sky. They're here, Lyra whispered. The corvette reappeared through the clouds, this time accompanied by 2 smaller ships. They moved like predators, black wings cutting the sky. The spear flared to life, its energy beam reaching downward, turning the air red. Jonah grabbed the seed and turned to Lyra. We have one shot. We have to connect it to the spear's main conduit before it fires. She nodded once. Then we go together. They ran through the glowing forest, the ground shaking under the force of the descending ships. Explosions rippled across the horizon, fire meeting bioluminescent mist. Roots tore free from the soil, lashing at the falling drones. The forest fought back with everything it had, but the Syndicate's machines pressed harder. When they reached the clearing, the spear's beam was already touching the ground, carving a burning ring into the soil. The air smelled of ozone and death. Jonah looked up, shielding his eyes. That's our target. He ran forward, clutching the seed to his chest. The energy radiating from the spear made his skin burn, but he didn't stop. Lyra followed, cutting down 2 metal drones that lunged from the trees. Sparks and vines exploded around her as she fought, her blade humming with the power of the heart. Jonah reached the edge of the crater and dropped to his knees. The ground beneath the spear's beam was cracked, molten, alive with energy. I need to sync the pulse, he shouted over the noise. Lyra joined him, her hand on his shoulder. You can't survive this alone. I don't plan to, he said. He pressed the seed into the glowing soil. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the seed sank deeper, roots spreading in every direction. The ground erupted in light, white and gold, brighter than the sun. The spear above flickered, its dark lines shattering like broken glass. Lyra turned to Jonah, shouting, "It's working!" But before they could celebrate, a lance of red energy shot down from the nearest corvette, striking the heartstone directly. The shockwave threw them both backward. Lyra hit the ground hard, her armor cracking. Jonah's ears rang, his vision blurred. He crawled toward her through the dust. "Lyra," she stirred weakly, blood streaking the side of her face. The seed, protected. Jonah looked past her. The seed still glowed, though dimmer now. The roots around it were burning, but the pulse was steady. He forced himself up, every muscle trembling. He placed both hands on the soil again, letting the energy flood him. "Come on," he whispered. "You've got this." The forest answered. Roots burst from the ground, wrapping around the crater. The energy from the heart surged upward, carrying the seed toward the beam. It rose slowly at first, then shot into the sky, trailing golden light like a comet. The spear screamed. Its black frame cracked, shards of red energy breaking loose as the seed hit its core. Light spilled from every seam, pure and brilliant. The corvettes above tried to flee, but the explosion that followed wasn't fire, it was life. Golden vines spread across the sky, branching like veins, swallowing the ship's hull. The spear dissolved into ash, raining down like glowing dust. When the silence finally came, Jonah collapsed beside Lyra, gasping for breath. The sky above was clear for the first time since he'd crashed. The stars shimmered faintly beyond the mist. Lyra opened her eyes, barely breathing. "Did you do it?" Jonah nodded weakly. "No, we did it." The forest around them glowed brighter than ever, its pulse soft but strong. The spear was gone, but the seed was out there now, drifting through the void, carrying the essence of Vireos to the stars. Jonah looked at the heavens and whispered, "Now they'll know. The galaxy will remember this world." Lyra reached out, her hand finding his. "And if they come again?" Jonah smiled, tired but certain. "Then we'll remind them what it means to be alive." The forest exhaled, the trees swaying in a quiet, grateful rhythm. For the first time, Vireos slept in peace. But the stars above had already begun to move, watching, listening, waiting for the echo of the seed. The war was far from over. The night had broken at last. Above Vireos, the sky was no longer a battlefield of light and shadow. It was open, endless, and full of stars. The black spear was gone, its ashes scattered into the upper winds. For the first time since Jonah's crash, the air felt clean. The forest breathed freely, its glow softer now, peaceful instead of afraid. Jonah woke beside the heartstone, the warmth of the soil beneath him like a steady heartbeat. His body ached from the surge, every bone humming with residual power. He looked at his hands, traced with thin golden lines that pulsed faintly under his skin. The planet's rhythm was still inside him, calm but constant. Lyra sat nearby, wrapped in a cocoon of woven vines that healed her wounds. The battle had nearly broken her, but her spirit was unshaken. When she saw Jonah stir, she smiled, tired but real. "You live," she said softly. He grinned faintly. "You sound disappointed." "I was ready to mourn," she replied. "The forest already began composing your elegy." Jonah laughed weakly. "Tell it to pause the music. I'm not done yet." They spent the morning walking through the aftermath. The grove where they had fought was a graveyard of burnt metal and regrown life. The fallen machines were already being reclaimed, vines curling through hollow frames, glowing moss spreading over steel. The planet wasted nothing. As they walked, Jonah noticed something strange. Every step he took left behind a faint shimmer in the soil. The forest responded to his presence now, like it knew him. He wasn't a visitor anymore. He was part of the system. Lyra watched the glowing footprints fade. "You are no longer just human," she said quietly. "You carry the forest wherever you walk." Jonah looked up at the treetops, the sunlight filtering through leaves that seemed to pulse with awareness. "Maybe that's the point. Maybe I'm supposed to." By midday, the heart spoke again, not with words, but through a deep vibration that rolled across the forest floor. The sound was low, ancient, like the planet itself was clearing its throat. Jonah closed his eyes. The meaning came to him as clear as speech. The seed has reached the stars. He opened his eyes, astonished. It's alive. It's growing out there. Lyra nodded. Then Vireos' song will not die. No, Jonah said, his voice steady. It's only begun. He looked to the horizon, where the sky shimmered faintly with a golden haze. He felt connected not just to this planet, but to something far beyond. Somewhere, the seed had taken root, carrying the memory of this world across light years. A signal of defiance. A declaration of life. That night, under a new field of stars, Jonah finished repairing what remained of the Horizon Runner. The ship was battered, half organic now, its metal hull threaded with vines, its engine humming with the faint tone of the forest's pulse. It wasn't the same vessel that had crashed here. It was something new, something alive. Lyra approached as he tightened the final bolt. You mean to leave? Jonah paused, then looked up at her. Not forever. But someone has to carry the warning. The galaxy thinks worlds like this can't fight back. They need to know that life can defend itself. She tilted her head, studying him with an expression somewhere between admiration and sorrow. You were a stranger who fell from the sky. Now the sky itself may answer you. Jonah smiled, his voice quiet. If it does, I'll be ready. She placed her hand on the ship's hull. Where will you go? He looked at the stars. Wherever the seed lands. The heart pulsed once more beneath them, a deep, rhythmic farewell. The vines at the edge of the grove shifted aside, creating a path to the open clearing. Jonah climbed into the pilot's seat, the controls flickering to life, half in human code, half in something the forest had written for him. Lyra stepped back, her glowing eyes fixed on him. The forest will remember you, Jonah Pierce. He looked down from the cockpit window. And I'll remember it. Every beat. The engines flared, not in flame, but in light. The ground beneath the runner rippled with color, and the ship rose slowly into the air. It wasn't the roar of machines that carried it upward. It was the song of the planet, lifting one of its own. As he climbed higher, Jonah looked down at the world that had changed him. The vast jungles shimmered like living veins. Rivers glowed faintly gold, flowing toward the sea. Vireos was no longer just a planet. It was a presence, a voice. He whispered, "Thank you," and turned toward the stars. Far above, the silence of space was broken by a transmission crackling through his console. A voice, distorted, alien, but unmistakably alive. We received your signal, Jonah Pierce. The seed has reached us. Jonah froze, heart pounding. Who is this? Static. Then another voice, deeper, layered, like several beings speaking at once. We are what the Syndicate tried to destroy. We are what you woke. Guide us, human of Vireos. Show us where life still dares to fight. Jonah leaned back, staring at the stars. His hands trembled, but not from fear. From awe. He smiled. Then let's show them what it means to be alive. As the Horizon Runner disappeared into the endless black, Vireos pulsed one final time, its glow spreading like a heartbeat across continents. The galaxy had heard its song, and somewhere, far beyond sight, new worlds began to stir, worlds that would soon learn the name Jonah Pierce and the story of the human who taught a planet how to fight back. The age of silence was over. The war for life had just begun.